The assassin who abandoned me 5 years ago found me at 417 on a rainy Tuesday, standing behind the counter of the little cafe I had built my life around. And 30 seconds later, he was staring at my son like he had just seen his own ghost. I knew Roman Vale before the bell over the door finished ringing. Dark coat, wet from the rain. Broad shoulders filling the doorway. Silver gray eyes sweeping the room with the same cold precision I remembered too well. Then those eyes found me. Everything inside me locked. Elias. 5 years, and he still said my name like he had a right to remember it. I set the cloth down. We're closing. It was a lie. Roman glanced at the 3 customers still drinking coffee, then back at me. I've been looking for you. My fingers curled against the counter. You found me. Congratulations. His jaw tightened. Before he could answer, the back door swung open. Dad, Mrs. Ortega said I can. Milo stopped when he saw the stranger. My heart dropped so hard it hurt. He was wearing his yellow raincoat, hood half off, dark hair plastered to his forehead. Water ran down his cheeks. And his eyes, God. I had spent 4 years pretending I didn't notice how much they looked like Roman's. Silver gray, almost metallic in certain light. The kind of eyes people remembered. Roman went completely still. Not surprised. Not confused. Still. His gaze moved from Milo's face to mine and back again. Milo, of course, had no idea his existence had just detonated something in the room. Who's that? He asked. I was already moving around the counter. Nobody you need to worry about. Roman's eyes snapped to me. Nobody. Milo, go wash your hands. But, now please. He made the face he reserved for rules he considered deeply unfair, then pushed back his wet hood. That was when I saw the color near his ear. Blue-green. Iridescent. 3 tiny scales gleaming where the rain had soaked through the edge of his hair. I crossed the distance between us so quickly I nearly slipped. My thumb brushed over the spot, while my other hand pulled his hood back into place. Milo frowned. Dad, you're wet. Obviously. Bathroom. He sighed with the dramatic suffering only a 4-year-old could produce and disappeared through the back door. I didn't breathe until it shut behind him. When I turned around, Roman was no longer looking at the door. He was looking at me. What was that? Nothing. Elias. Don't. The word came out sharper than I intended. Good. Let it. Roman's gaze narrowed, but he didn't move closer. 5 years ago, he would have. How old is he? He asked. There it was. Not the question yet. The one before it. The calculation. I picked up the cloth again because my hands needed something to do. You don't get to walk in here after 5 years and interrogate me. I'm not interrogating you. You're an assassin, Roman. You have a very generous definition of interrogation. Something flickered across his face. Maybe pain. Maybe memory. I refuse to care which. I came because I needed to see you, he said. That sounds like a problem you should have had 5 years ago. He took that without defending himself. Another thing I wasn't prepared for. My anger had learned to live with the Roman who left. It had no idea what to do with a Roman who stood still and let me hurt him. The back door cracked open. Milo peeked through. Can I have a cookie? I looked over. 1. He grinned, vanished again, and Roman watched the door close. His expression changed so subtly most people would have missed it. I didn't. Roman Vale had spent his life making himself unreadable. I had once known how to read him anyway. Shock first, then calculation, then something much worse. Loss. His eyes returned to mine. Elias. I felt my spine straighten. No, he hadn't even asked yet. You don't know what I was going to say. I know you. His mouth tightened. Do you? That landed closer to bone than I wanted. I placed both hands flat on the counter between us. Whatever you came here looking for, you don't get to decide what happens next. His gaze dropped briefly to my hands, then lifted again. He said nothing. And in that silence, I saw the exact moment the arithmetic finished behind his eyes. 5 years since he left. A 4-year-old boy with his silver-gray stare. Roman looked toward the back room one more time, then at me, and the question he hadn't asked settled between us anyway. The scales had confused him. The eyes hadn't. And for the first time since he walked through my door, I understood that finding me was no longer the thing Roman cared about most. He wanted to know who my son belonged to, and what that truth would allow him to demand from us. Roman didn't ask the question right away. That surprised me more than if he had slammed both hands on the counter and demanded an answer. He simply stood there, staring toward the back room where Milo had disappeared, while the rain tapped softly against the cafe windows behind him. The silence stretched long enough that I could hear the espresso machine cooling down. Then Roman looked at me. How old is he? There was no point pretending I hadn't heard the calculation happening in his head. 4. His face changed by almost nothing, but I knew him well enough to see the hit land. His eyes dropped for a second. 4 years old. 5 years since he walked away. Exactly enough time for the truth to become obvious. Elias. I picked up the cloth again and folded it once, carefully, because if I didn't give my hands something to do, I might have thrown the nearest mug at him. Ask it. His jaw flexed. Is he mine? There it was. No dramatic music. No shattered glass. Just 5 years of anger reduced to 4 words. I looked toward the back door. Milo was humming to himself somewhere beyond it, probably trying to negotiate with the cookie jar. Then I looked back at Roman. Yes. For the first time since he walked in, Roman lost control of his face. His breath stopped. His eyes closed briefly, like the answer had struck somewhere physical. When they opened again, he looked older. Not weaker. Just suddenly human in a way I had almost forgotten he could be. He's my son. Biologically. His gaze sharpened. What does that mean? Exactly what I said. I stepped around the counter and stopped several feet from him. You contributed to his existence. That is the fact you get today. Elias, no. You asked a question. I answered it. His voice lowered. You should have told me. That sentence could have destroyed the room 5 years ago. Now it only made something cold settle inside me. When he frowned. What? When exactly should I have told you? I kept my voice quiet because Milo was 20 feet away, and because I refused to let Roman turn this into another moment where he controlled the temperature of the room. Before you left? I didn't know yet. After you left? You made it very clear you didn't want anything from me. His eyes flickered. I never said, you said enough. That stopped him. Good. 3 weeks after you disappeared, I found out I was pregnant. The pregnancy had shocked me almost as much as his disappearance. I had not believed it was possible for me until the 3rd test said otherwise, and Roman still did not know why that part had terrified me. I was not ready to tell him yet. Roman went absolutely still again. This time there was no calculation left. Only consequence. 3 weeks, he repeated. Yes. And you did it alone. I laughed once, but there was no humor in it. Pregnancy? Birth? The first fever? The nights he wouldn't sleep unless I walked the floor until sunrise? Yeah, all of it. Roman looked toward the back room again. His hand tightened at his side. I didn't know. I'm aware. If I had known, you didn't. My voice came out sharper than I intended, but I didn't take it back. And you don't get to rewrite 5 years with a hypothetical. He looked at me for a long moment. I'm not trying to. Good. The back door opened before either of us could say more. Milo emerged with half a cookie in one hand and crumbs on his raincoat. He looked between us with open curiosity. Dad, why is that man still here? Roman's expression did something painful. I ignored it. Because we're talking. Milo considered that. You look mad. Observant. He smiled, then looked at Roman. Are you in trouble? Roman actually blinked. Possibly. Milo nodded like this confirmed something important. Dad gives long talks when people are in trouble. Milo. What? It's true. I pointed toward the little table near the kitchen. Finish your cookie. He went, but not far enough to stop listening. Roman waited until Milo was occupied before speaking again. Does he know? Know what? Who I am. No, that answer hurt him too. I could see it. He doesn't know he has a father? He knows he has one. I held Roman's gaze. He doesn't know your name. Roman absorbed that in silence. Why? Because children shouldn't have to miss people they've never met. The words landed between us with more force than I expected. Roman looked down. I had spent years imagining this moment in different forms, though I hated admitting it. In some versions, I screamed at him. In others, he begged. In the worst ones, he didn't care at all. I had never imagined this. Roman standing in my cafe looking like grief had finally caught up with him, and me realizing that his pain changed absolutely nothing about the rules. You can't just show up and become his father because the timing makes sense, I said. I know. Do you? I said I know. Biology is not permission, Roman. He lifted his eyes to mine. Then tell me what permission looks like. That was the first thing he had said all afternoon that I wasn't prepared for. I had expected demands. Questions. Maybe even anger. Roman had always been a man who solved problems by taking control of them. But he didn't move closer. He didn't ask to speak to Milo alone. He didn't tell me I was being unfair. He just waited. And I hated that part of me noticed. Right now? I said. Permission looks like you leaving when I ask you to leave. His face went still again. And after that, I haven't decided. Elias. That is the answer. Something old flashed in his eyes. The instinct to push, to command, to turn uncertainty into a problem he could eliminate. Then it disappeared. Roman gave one slow nod. All right. He reached for the door. I should have felt victorious. Instead, something in my chest tightened when he glanced one last time toward Milo. Not possessive, not calculating. Lost. He opened the door, and cold rain rushed in around him. For what it's worth, he said without turning, I'm sorry you did all of that alone. I wanted to tell him sorry was cheap. I wanted to tell him he had no idea what alone had cost me. But before I could answer, Milo called from behind me. Dad. I turned. Yeah. His silver-gray eyes moved. Toward the closing door. Why does that man look sad? By the time I looked back, Roman was gone. But the question stayed. Because the man who had once walked away from me like our life together meant nothing had just learned he had a son, and looked like he had lost something priceless. Which left me with a harder question than paternity ever had. If Roman still cared enough for the truth to break him, why had he abandoned me in the first place? For the next 2 days, Roman did exactly what I told him to do. Nothing. No calls. No messages. No black car parked across the street. No stranger asking questions about Milo at school. I checked anyway. Of course I checked. Roman had spent most of his adult life finding people who didn't want to be found. If he wanted my address history, Milo's birth records, my bank statements, or the name of every person I spoke to in a week, I knew exactly how quickly he could get them. That was what bothered me most. Not what he had done. What he could do. By the third morning, I found myself watching the cafe window every time the bell above the door moved. He didn't come. I hated that I noticed. Around noon, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. One message. No greeting. No pressure. Just, can I come by after closing? I stared at it long enough for Milo to look up from the table where he was drawing a whale with 6 legs. Is your phone being mean? Something like that. You should put it in timeout. I almost laughed. Instead, I typed one word. Yes. Roman arrived at 6:30. Not 6:20. Not 6:15 to prove he was eager. Exactly when I told him to. I had already locked the front door and flipped the sign to closed. Milo sat at a corner table eating apple slices, watching Roman with the kind of open curiosity adults spent years learning to hide. Roman stopped just inside the door. You said I could come. I did. His eyes moved to Milo, then back to me. He waited. That was new. The old Roman would have crossed the room, assessed the problem, and decided what happened next before anyone else finished speaking. This Roman stood there like he understood that one wrong assumption could send him back into the rain. Before anything happens, I said, there's something I need to do. Roman nodded. I went to Milo and crouched beside his chair. My heart was beating harder than it had when I told Roman the truth. This was different. Roman was an adult. He could survive being hurt by information. Milo was 4. Remember when you asked why that man looked sad? Milo glanced at Roman. Because he was in trouble? Roman's mouth almost moved. Partly, I said. Milo waited. I took his small hand in mine. I told you before that you have another parent. Someone who wasn't here when you were born. His expression changed from curiosity to concentration. My other dad. Yes. I felt Roman go still across the room. That's him. Milo looked at Roman for a long time. Roman didn't move closer. Didn't smile too widely. Didn't kneel and open his arms like this was supposed to become some perfect reunion because biology had finally been named. He just let Milo look. You're my dad? Milo asked. Roman's voice was quieter than I had ever heard it. I'm your biological father. Milo frowned. What does biological mean? It means I helped make you. Milo considered that with great seriousness. Dad says making something doesn't mean you get to keep it. I closed my eyes. Roman actually looked at me. He was talking about cookies, I said. I assumed. Milo took another apple slice. Were you gone because you didn't like me? Roman's face changed so fast it hurt to see. He took one step forward, then stopped himself. No, you didn't know me. I didn't know you existed. Milo looked at me for confirmation. I nodded. That part is true. Oh, he ate the apple. Apparently, 4 years of fatherhood could be rearranged around one syllable if you were still young enough to believe adults when they answered plainly. Can he stay for dinner? Milo asked me. Roman said nothing. That silence became the test. I could feel it. Not because Roman planned it. Because I did. He wanted an answer. Milo wanted an answer. And for once, Roman had to live inside a situation he could not control. For an hour, I said. Then he leaves. Roman nodded immediately. All right. Dinner was awkward enough to almost be funny. Milo asked Roman whether he liked sharks, pancakes, dogs, and cartoons involving construction equipment. Roman answered every question like he was being interviewed for a position of national importance. He did not ask Milo where he went to preschool. He did not ask for medical information. He did not ask who watched him when I worked. He asked nothing that could have been useful to an assassin. I noticed that too. After Milo went to wash chocolate from his hands, I leaned against the counter. You could find out everything about us without asking me. Roman's eyes met mine. Yes. The honesty irritated me. Have you? No, why should I believe that? You shouldn't. I wasn't expecting that. Roman continued. Not yet. Trust me when I give you a reason. For a second, I had nothing to say. He reached into his coat and placed his phone on the counter between us. I deleted the request before it went anywhere. My stomach tightened. What request? A background search. I started one after I left here. There it was. The old instinct. Fast. Efficient. Terrifyingly familiar. And then, I stopped. Why? Roman glanced toward the hallway where Milo was humming to himself. Because you told me permission mattered. Something shifted inside me. Not forgiveness. Not trust. Something smaller and more dangerous. Evidence. When the hour was over, Roman stood without being asked. Milo looked disappointed. Are you coming back? Roman looked at me first. Not at Milo. Me. If your dad says I can. Milo turned his silver-gray eyes on me. The same eyes Roman had. The same eyes that had once felt like evidence of a problem I had to hide from the world. Maybe, I said. Roman accepted that answer too. After he left, Milo went back to his whale drawing as if his universe hadn't changed shape. Mine had. Because the man who abandoned me had just been handed the easiest opportunity in the world to become controlling again, and he had stopped himself. That did not make him safe. It did not make him forgiven. But it made one belief harder to hold on to. Roman was not behaving like a man who had walked away because he felt nothing, which meant the question was no longer whether he had cared. It was what could possibly have made a man who cared that much decide abandonment was the better choice. Roman came back 3 days later because I let him. Then again the following week. Each visit had rules. He arrived when I said he could. He stayed where I could see him. He never asked Milo questions I hadn't approved, and when the hour was over, he left without bargaining for another 10 minutes. That should have made things easier. Instead, it made the past harder to understand. The Roman I remembered from 5 years ago had made our ending brutally simple. We had been temporary. A mistake born from isolation and bad timing. He had said it with that same controlled face he wore when deciding whether someone was lying to him. I had believed him because believing anything else would have required hope. But this Roman remembered things a man should have forgotten if I had meant so little. The first time we met, one of his missions had gone wrong somewhere off the coast. I had found him bleeding in black water and pulled him toward shore, then let him believe I was only a local who knew the sea too well. He came back to thank me, then again for coffee, then again because neither of us was pretending it was gratitude anymore. One evening, Milo shoved a plate toward him. Dad made lemon cake. Roman looked at the slice, then at me. You still hate frosting? My hand stopped over the coffee pot. Milo blinked. Dad hates frosting. Too sweet, Roman said before I could answer. He scrapes it off and pretends nobody notices. Milo stared at me with the betrayed expression of a child discovering parental hypocrisy. You said wasting food is bad. Eat your cake. He did. Roman didn't smile, but something warm passed through his eyes. I hated that I remembered exactly what that look used to mean. Later, after Milo went upstairs, I found Roman standing near the cafe window, waiting for the minute I had told him his visit ended. You remember my frosting preferences? I said. He turned. Apparently. You remembered which wrist I broke when I was 19. That had happened during his previous visit, when Milo asked why I wore my watch on the right. Roman had answered before I could. You remembered I can't sleep if a faucet is dripping. His expression became guarded. Elias. And you knew exactly where I kept the first aid kit before I moved it. Silence. Rain had started outside, light enough that the street lamps reflected in the wet pavement like blurred coins. So either you have a terrifying memory, I said, or the last conversation we had makes less sense every time you walk through that door. His jaw tightened. That was answer enough to keep me going. You told me we were nothing. That staying with me had been convenient. That you were tired of pretending it meant more. Roman looked away. I remember. The anger I had carried for 5 years had once been clean. Now it had questions inside it. Then explain why a man who supposedly couldn't wait to get rid of me remembers how I take coffee 5 years later. Roman's eyes came back to mine. Because what I told you wasn't the whole truth. The room seemed to contract around that sentence. I had known it was coming. Part of me had known since the first time he stopped himself from pushing past one of my boundaries. Knowing didn't make hearing it easier. How much of it was a lie? I asked. Roman's face closed. Not coldly. More like someone bracing himself against impact. My work was the reason I left. I stared at him. Your work? Yes. You mean killing people for money? Among other things. Don't make it sound respectable. I'm not trying to. He took a breath. You knew I did dangerous work. You didn't know how dangerous. Because you never told me. Correct. The word came without defense. That unsettled me more than an excuse would have. Roman continued. By the time I realized what being with you had changed, I also understood what could happen if the wrong people realized you mattered to me. My pulse slowed instead of speeding up. Sometimes anger did that when it became too precise. So I was a weakness. You were someone they could use. That isn't the same thing. In my world, it was. There. A partial answer. Enough to explain why he might have been afraid. Not enough to explain what he had done with that fear. You thought being near you could put me in danger. Yes. And your solution was to leave. Roman didn't answer immediately. Yes. I folded my arms. That explains leaving town. It doesn't explain destroying me on the way out. His eyes dropped. For the first time since he came back into my life, Roman looked like he wanted to escape a conversation. I didn't let him. You could have told me you were afraid. I couldn't. Couldn't or wouldn't. His silence answered that one. I stepped closer. Not because I trusted him. Because I was done letting distance protect his version of the past. You stood in my kitchen and looked me in the face. You told me I had imagined what was between us. You told me I had mistaken loneliness for love. His throat moved. I know. No. You remember. That isn't the same as explaining it. He met my eyes then, and whatever I saw there made the anger in me sharpen into dread. Not guilt alone. Intention. He had not merely panicked and said cruel things. There had been a reason he chose those exact words. Elias, he said quietly, if I tell you the rest, it won't make what I did better. Good. I'm not asking you to make it better. It may make you hate me more. That decision is mine. The words came out before I could think about them, and something changed in his face. I pointed toward the chair across from me. You want another hour with Milo next week? You want me to keep considering whether you belong anywhere near this family? Then I'm done accepting pieces. Roman looked at the chair, but didn't sit. You want everything. I want the truth you decided I couldn't handle 5 years ago. He closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them. All right. No interruption. No excuse. No promise that I would understand. Just agreement. He pulled out the chair and sat. I stayed standing. For years, I had believed Roman left because loving me had been easy to stop. Now I knew that wasn't true. His work had made him afraid. He had believed staying with me would put me at risk. That explained why he went. It did not explain why he had needed me to believe I meant nothing when he did. And, from the way Roman looked at me across that table, I understood the missing answer was not going to prove he had loved me less. It was going to tell me what he believed love gave him the right to do. Roman sat across from me with both hands resting on the table, palms down, as if even he didn't trust himself to move. I stayed standing. You wanted everything, he said. I do. He looked toward the dark window, then back at me. A few weeks before I left, someone I worked with mentioned you. My stomach tightened. Mention me how? Your name. Where you lived. The cafe you liked near the harbor. His voice remained controlled, but I could hear the strain underneath it. Nothing happened to you. No one came after you, but they knew you existed. I stared at him, and that was enough. For me, yes. There was no drama in the answer. That made it worse. Roman continued before I could speak. People in my line of work survive by being predictable in only one way. We don't give anyone leverage. No family. No routines that matter. No person someone can threaten and know will break. So I was leverage. You were the first thing in years I was afraid to lose. The words should have comforted me. Once they would have. Instead, they made my chest ache with a different kind of anger. And you decided the solution was to lose me yourself. His jaw tightened. Yes. That still doesn't explain what you said. I know. Then explain it. Roman looked down at his hands. I knew if I told you the truth, you would have argued. I almost laughed. You're damn right I would have. You would have told me it was your decision whether the risk was worth taking. I went still. He lifted his eyes. And you would have been right. The room seemed quieter after that. But you didn't believe that then. No, what did you believe? Roman took a breath. That you didn't understand what the risk actually meant. That I did. And because I understood it better, I thought I had the right to make the decision. There it was. Not the answer I had imagined for 5 years. Not another lover. Not boredom. Not some secret life more important than me. Something almost worse because part of it sounded like love. So you lied. Yes. On purpose. Yes. His honesty had stopped feeling refreshing. Now it felt like a blade being handed back to me piece by piece. You told me I had imagined us. Roman's mouth tightened. Yes. You said staying with me had been convenient. Yes. You said you were tired of pretending it meant something. His eyes closed for 1 second. Yes. Why those words? Roman didn't answer immediately. I saw the moment he considered softening it. Then he didn't. Because I needed you to stop believing there was something to wait for. My throat went tight. You wanted me to hate you. I wanted you to let me go. Those aren't the same thing. I know that now. I stepped back from the table. Suddenly, I needed the distance. Not because I was afraid of him. Because I finally understood him. For 5 years, I had carried one clean wound. Roman had stopped loving me. It had been brutal, but simple. Simple things scar over. This was not simple. You loved me, I said. Roman's face changed. He didn't look relieved. Good. Yes. The answer was barely audible. You loved me, and you still stood there and made me believe I had been stupid for loving you back. Yes. Because you thought your fear mattered more than my choice. He flinched then. Not visibly enough for anyone else. Enough for me. Yes. I laughed once, but it came out broken. Do you understand how much worse that is? Yes. No, Roman. I don't think you do. I leaned both hands on the table. If you had stopped loving me, then you hurt me because you didn't care anymore. I could survive that. But you cared. You knew exactly what I would feel because you knew me, and you used that knowledge to make sure I wouldn't follow you. His voice was low. I thought if you hated me, you would stay safe. You thought if you hurt me badly enough, I would behave the way you wanted. He said nothing. That isn't protection. I know. It's control. The word landed harder than anything else I had said. Roman held my gaze. Yes. No defense. No argument. Understanding was not forgiveness. It only made the next question clearer. Do you still believe you did the right thing? I asked. That was the real test. Roman looked toward the hallway where Milo had gone upstairs hours ago. Then back at me. No, not even because I survived. Especially because you survived. His answer caught me off guard. What does that mean? It means you built a life without me. You raised our son without me. You made every decision I thought I had to make for you. His voice roughened. And I lost 5 years because I never trusted you enough to let you choose. The anger in my chest didn't disappear. But its shape changed. I was no longer fighting a man who had never loved me. I was facing a man who had loved me badly. That was harder. Because hate would have been easier than deciding whether bad love could ever become something safe. Roman stood slowly. I'm not asking you to forgive me. Good. I'm not asking you to understand. I do understand. He looked surprised. I held his gaze. That's the problem. He waited. You thought love gave you the right to decide for me once. If you want any place in Milo's life, or mine, you don't get to prove you loved me then. I moved aside, leaving the path to the door open. You have to prove you can love me now without taking my choices away. Roman nodded once. No promises. No speech. He left when I asked him to leave. And after the door closed, I stood alone in the quiet cafe with the strangest truth of all. I had spent 5 years wishing I could learn that Roman had loved me. Now that I knew, love was no longer the question. After Roman told me the truth, I stopped wondering whether he had loved me. That question had kept me alive for 5 years, mostly because unanswered pain is easier to carry than complicated truth. Now I had the answer, and it changed what I needed from him. Love was no longer evidence. Behavior was. So when Roman came back 4 days later, I didn't ask him to explain the past again. I asked him something harder. Do you trust me? He stood just inside the cafe after closing, rain darkening the shoulders of his coat. Milo was upstairs with a movie and strict instructions not to come down unless the building was on fire. Roman studied my face. Yes. That was fast. You asked a direct question. Then answer another one. Do you trust me when I know something you don't? He hesitated. That answer was more useful. I took my keys from the counter. Come with me. Roman didn't ask where. He followed because I had asked him to, not because he had decided I needed an escort. I noticed that too. We walked behind the cafe to the narrow strip of shoreline where the town lights faded and the ocean turned black beneath the clouds. Rain had thinned to mist. Water slid over the rocks, catching silver from the moon whenever it broke through. Roman stopped several feet behind me. Elias. I faced the sea. There's something you never knew about me. Silence. He didn't move closer. Something I was going to tell you, I continued. Before you left. Roman's expression tightened. You don't have to tell me now because I told you the truth. I know. That mattered. I'm telling you because I need to know what you do with something I choose to give you. His eyes stayed on mine. All right. My heartbeat climbed anyway. For years, I had imagined humans seeing what I was in the worst possible ways. Screaming. Disgust. Curiosity sharp enough to become ownership. Roman frightened me for a different reason. His opinion still mattered, and I hated that it did. I stepped into the water. He watched my shoes disappear beneath the surface. Elias. Stay there. Roman stopped immediately. I went deeper. The cold reached my knees, my thighs, my waist. The change began where it always did, with a thin electric pull beneath my skin. I closed my eyes. For once, I didn't fight it. When I opened them, blue-green scales were already moving up my sides, catching light beneath the water. My legs fused slowly below the surface, bones and muscle reshaping into the long silver-blue tail I had spent years making sure no human ever saw. Roman did not speak. That silence was almost unbearable. I turned enough that the moonlight struck the scales along my hip and lower back. The water around me reflected fragments of both of us. Roman standing motionless on shore, me half submerged where the sea erased the line between man and something else. This is what Milo inherited from me, I said. The scales. Roman's eyes moved over me, but there was nothing clinical in the way he looked. No calculation. No disgust. Just stunned attention. He stopped. I waited. Say it. I don't know what word you use. Of all the responses I had prepared for, that wasn't one of them. Merman works. Roman stared at me, and I watched 5 years of memory rearrange itself behind his eyes. The night we met. I knew exactly which night he meant. Your mission went wrong. You were already in the water. Yes. His breath left him slowly. And you pulled me out. Yes. You let me think you were just some man who knew the coast. You were bleeding into the Atlantic. It did not feel like the ideal moment for species disclosure. Something almost like a laugh caught in his throat and disappeared. Then Roman looked at the water, then back at my face. You were going to tell me? Eventually. Why didn't you? I gave him a look. You left. Pain crossed his face. Right. Humans don't always react well to things they can't explain. Did someone hurt you because of this? His jaw flexed, the old instinct searching for a threat to eliminate. Then he stopped himself. Sorry. What do you want me to understand? The question loosened something in my chest. That I spent years believing if you had known what I was, leaving might have been easier for you. Roman's expression hardened, not at me. Then make me understand. So I told him only what mattered. I could live on land. Water made hiding harder. Milo was healthy. The scales were part of him, not something to fix. Secrecy kept us safe because wonder could become fear when it became real. Roman listened. He never asked about abilities or others like me. He asked what Milo needed and what I wanted him to know. Eventually, I moved back toward shore. The transformation reversed as the water shallowed. Roman took off his coat and held it out, then stopped before coming closer. Can I? Such a small question. Once, he would have assumed. I nodded. He wrapped the coat around my shoulders without touching more than necessary. I looked up at him. You're not afraid. I'm afraid. Of a lot of things. Of me? No, the answer came easily. Of losing the chance to know you properly? Yes. I hated how much that hurt in a good way. Acceptance doesn't fix what happened, I said. I know. Seeing this doesn't mean you've earned everything else. I know. You keep saying that. A faint, tired smile touched his mouth. I'm trying to prove I can learn. Behind us, the dark water held our reflections together for a moment before a wave broke them apart. I watched the image disappear and realized something had changed anyway. Roman now knew the truth I had once been most afraid to give him, and he had not turned me into a monster, a problem, or a possession. He had passed the test I had feared most. But as we walked back toward the café, I understood there was still one test that mattered more. Accepting me while the night was quiet was easy. The real question was what Roman would do when loving me made him afraid again. The first sign that Roman had failed the test came 3 days after I showed him my scales. He was supposed to meet Milo at the café at 4. At 3:42, my phone rang. "Don't take Milo home tonight," Roman said. No greeting. No explanation. Just an order. Every warm thing I had allowed myself to feel that week went cold. Try that again. Silence on the other end. Then, more carefully, "I need you and Milo to stay somewhere else tonight." Why? Someone from my old network noticed I've been coming to Greyhaven. I looked through the cafe window at Milo drawing behind the counter. Noticed how much? Enough to ask why. Do they know about Milo? I don't think so. About me? Another pause. They know you matter. The words hit differently now that I knew exactly what those words had meant 5 years ago. Leverage. Vulnerability. Something Roman believed had to be removed from the board before anyone else could use it. What happened? I asked. Nothing yet. Then why are you telling me not to go home? Because I've already arranged another place. My grip tightened around the phone. You've already arranged it. Elias, what else? Silence. That was my answer. What else did you arrange without asking me? His voice lowered. Temporary identities. A car. Enough cash that nothing needs to be traced. If we leave tonight. I hung up. Roman arrived 12 minutes later. Of course he did. He came through the cafe door fast, then stopped when he saw me standing behind the counter. Milo was upstairs. I had made sure of that. You hung up on me. Observant. We don't have time for this. The sentence was so familiar I almost laughed. There it is. Roman frowned. What? The part where your fear becomes everyone else's emergency. His jaw tightened. This is not theoretical. Neither was 5 years ago. He went still. Good. I wanted him to hear it. Someone knows I'm here, he said. That creates a risk. Then tell me the risk. I just did. No. You gave me your conclusion. I stepped out from behind the counter. You decided we should leave. You arranged where we would go. You prepared identities for my son and me. And then you called to tell me what I was doing. I was trying to make sure you had options. You had already chosen the option. Because I know how this works. There. The sentence. The exact logic he had admitted was wrong. My anger sharpened so fast it became almost calm. And I don't. Roman stopped. He knew what he had said the moment he heard it. That isn't what I meant. It is exactly what you meant. Elias, if they connect you to me, then give me the information and let me decide what I'm willing to do with it. You have Milo to think about. The words landed like a slap. I stared at him. Do not use my son to make your decisions sound like mine. Roman's face changed. Regret, immediate and real. Too late. I didn't mean, I have been thinking about Milo every day since before he was born. My voice stayed low, but my hands had started shaking. I chose where we live. I chose who knows about him. I chose when to tell him about you. I chose when to tell you what I am. And every one of those choices existed because I learned what happens when I trust someone who thinks loving me gives him better judgment than I have. Roman looked like I had struck him. I thought I was past this. So did I. That hurt more than anger. Because I had believed him at the shore. Not completely, but enough to show him my tail. Enough to let him see Milo's scales as something precious instead of dangerous. Enough to start imagining that maybe the man who had left me was not the man standing in front of me anymore. Then fear entered the room, and Roman became fluent in the same language he had always spoken. Decide first. Explain later. Protect me from my own choices. The arrangements can be canceled, he said. That isn't the point. I know. Do you? I do now. I shook my head. You knew this already, Roman. The bitterness surprised even me. You sat at that table and told me exactly what you had done wrong. Then the second you got scared enough, you did it again. He had no answer. That silence was the most honest thing between us. From upstairs came the faint sound of Milo laughing at whatever cartoon he was watching. Roman looked toward the ceiling. Can I see him before I go? No, his eyes came back to mine. I saw pain there, but for once I refused to carry it for him. You don't get access to him while I'm trying to decide whether your presence makes our lives safer or just gives you another reason to control them. Roman nodded slowly. All right. And you're not arranging anything else? I won't. No surveillance. No new identities. No car waiting somewhere. No decisions you plan to explain after the fact. Understood. He moved toward the door, then stopped. The risk is still real. I know. You may decide leaving Greyhaven is the right choice. Maybe. I held his gaze. But if I leave, it will be because I chose it. Roman nodded once and walked out. I locked the door behind him. For several minutes, I stood there listening to the rain begin against the glass. 5 years ago, Roman had decided disappearing was the only way to keep me safe. After he left, I had built my own version of that belief. Stay hidden. Stay small. Never give anyone enough access to ruin what I had built. Now both versions had failed me. Roman's control wasn't safety. My isolation wasn't freedom. And someone from his old life now knew enough about me that pretending nothing had changed was no longer an option. I could take Milo and vanish before dawn. I knew how. I had done it once already. Or I could do something I had never done before. Stay, keep my choices, and force Roman to face the danger with me instead of for me. This time, the decision would be mine. I did not take Milo and disappear before dawn. 5 years ago, that would have been the only answer I trusted. This time, I called Roman. Come to the cafe, I said. Alone. And don't arrange anything before you get here. He arrived 20 minutes later. I had already sent Milo upstairs with headphones and a movie. Roman stopped inside the locked door and waited. No orders. No emergency plan placed in front of me. Just waiting. Tell me exactly what you know, I said. He did. Someone in his old professional network had noticed his repeated trips to Greyhaven. They knew he had reconnected with someone important from his past. They did not know I was a Merman. They did not know Milo was his son. There had been no attack, no threat, no demand. The danger was leverage, someone realizing Roman had something to lose and deciding that information might become useful later. So we have a risk, I said. Yes. Not a crisis. Roman hesitated. Not yet. And that difference matters. Yes. I moved around the counter and faced him directly. Here's what we're not doing. Milo and I are not disappearing tonight. We're not taking new names because you prepared them. You're not moving us to a place I didn't choose. And you're not watching us without telling me because you think fear gives you permission. Roman swallowed. Understood. I'm not finished. He nodded. I took a breath. This was the part that frightened me. Not leaving would have been easier in one way. I knew how to run. I knew how to make myself small enough that nobody could reach me. Staying required something I had never been good at. Trust without surrender. If you believe something changes the risk, I said, you tell me. All of it. Not the conclusion. The information. Then we decide what happens. Roman's eyes held mine. Together. Together. Saying the word felt more dangerous than showing him my scales had. And, if we disagree, he asked, then you don't secretly solve the disagreement while I'm sleeping. A faint wince crossed his face. Fair. No. Necessary. Necessary, he corrected. I watched him for a moment. Can you actually do that? Roman was quiet long enough that I respected the answer before he even gave it. I don't know if it will ever be instinctive. My chest tightened. He continued. But I can choose it. That was the first answer that sounded real. Not a promise that fear would vanish. A promise that fear would no longer get the final vote. Then choose it now, I said. What do you want me to do? Roman asked. There it was. The question he should have asked 5 years ago. The question he had failed to ask 3 days ago. I looked toward the dark window. My reflection floated in the glass. The same face that had once run because running was the only choice anyone had left me. I want to stay in Greyhaven, I said. I want Milo's life disrupted as little as possible. I want to know if the situation changes. And I want the part of your old life that keeps turning people I love into potential leverage gone. Roman's expression changed. That last request had weight. That part will cost me. I assumed it would. My aliases. Accounts. Safe locations. People who owe me favors. The channels I use to know what's moving before it reaches me. You'd lose all of that. If I leave completely, yes. And what does that mean for you? Roman gave a small, humorless smile. It means I stop being very good at disappearing. For a man like Roman, that was not retirement. It was disarmament. Not physically. Structurally. He had built his entire adult life around always having another identity, another exit, another hidden route. Giving that up meant the next version of his life would have fewer doors only he could see. I'm not asking you to make yourself helpless, I said. I know. I'm asking you to stop belonging to a system that makes my son useful against you. I know. Then decide. Roman looked at me. No, my stomach dropped. Then he added, you decide whether that is what you need from me. If it is, I'll do it. I stared at him. The difference was small enough that another person might have missed it. To me, it was everything. That's what I need, I said. Then it's done. He didn't reach for his phone immediately. He didn't perform the choice for me like sacrifice was theater. We spent the next hour going through what would change and what would not. What I wanted to know. What Milo needed to know. What Roman would shut down. What precautions I agreed to keep. Every time he started to move too quickly, he stopped and asked. By morning, the temporary identities he had created for us were gone. His pending work was terminated. The encrypted channels that kept him tied to the network were closed. The safe houses, hidden accounts, and professional access that had allowed him to vanish whenever life became dangerous were surrendered or dismantled. One final contact warned him that once his credentials were burned, they could not be restored. If Roman ever tried to return, he would return without the protections that had made him untouchable. Roman closed the channel anyway. It did not make the world perfectly safe. Nothing could. It made one thing clear. My family could no longer be used to drag Roman back into a life he had chosen to leave, and Roman could no longer disappear into that life the next time loving us frightened him. When the last connection died, I expected grief. Instead, he exhaled like a man putting down something heavy enough that he had forgotten he was carrying it. Later that afternoon, Milo came downstairs and found Roman sitting at his usual table. He looked at me first. Is he still in trouble? A little. Roman nodded solemnly. Fair. Milo climbed into the chair across from him. Can he come back tomorrow? Roman didn't answer. He looked at me. I let the silence stay for a moment, because this time it belonged to me. Yes, I said. Your father can come back tomorrow. Roman's eyes closed briefly. When they opened, there was no victory in them. Only gratitude. That was when I knew something irreversible had happened. Roman had not earned the right to reclaim the man he abandoned, but he had earned the right to keep becoming Milo's father. And for the first time since he returned, the question of whether he was safe enough to stay no longer terrified me. What frightened me now was simpler. He had changed enough that I no longer needed to push him away. So I had to decide whether, when all obligation and fear were removed, I still wanted to let him come closer. For the next several weeks, Roman kept coming back because I kept letting him. He never treated one yes as permanent access. He asked before taking Milo anywhere, before staying for dinner, even before carrying him upstairs when he fell asleep against Roman's shoulder. 5 years ago, Roman had broken my trust with one enormous decision. Now he rebuilt it through small ones. Milo adapted faster than either of us. Roman became the person he saved blue gummy candies for, the person he showed every crooked drawing, the person he called when a loose tooth finally came out, because apparently that qualified as urgent news. Roman never used Milo's attachment as leverage and never asked whether being a good father had earned him another chance. He simply became Milo's father. And once obligation disappeared, I had nothing left to hide behind. Roman had learned to ask, learned to hear no, and become dangerously easy to want again. One evening after closing, I found him sitting with Milo near the shoreline behind the cafe. Milo had kicked off his shoes and was standing ankle-deep in the water, laughing every time a wave chased him back. Roman stayed close enough to catch him if he slipped, but never touched him unless Milo reached first. The sunset turned the surface of the ocean copper and silver. I stopped several feet away and watched them. Milo looked over. Dad, both of us answered. Yeah. Roman froze. I did too. Milo stared between us, delighted by the mistake. That was weird. Roman looked at me, waiting for some correction. Months ago, I would have made one. Instead, I laughed. Which dad? I asked. Milo considered this like I had presented him with a serious logistical problem. Then he pointed at Roman. That one. I need help with my shoe. Roman's face went completely still. He crouched and helped Milo with the wet laces without saying anything, but when he stood again, his eyes were bright. He didn't look at me like he had won something. He looked grateful. That mattered too. Later, Milo went upstairs to shower. leaving Roman and me alone by the water. For once, neither of us seemed in a hurry to fill the silence. Roman stood beside me, not touching. "Can I ask you something?" he said. I smiled faintly. "Look at you. I'm learning." Slowly, painfully, I looked toward the ocean. "Ask." He hesitated. "Are you happy?" I turned to him. Of all the questions I expected, that wasn't one of them. That's not very assassin-like. "I'm out of practice." "Good." His mouth moved into the smallest smile. Then he waited for the answer. I looked at the water again. My reflection stretched across the surface beside his, distorted by every small wave. Years ago, I had thought safety meant keeping the parts of myself that could be used against me hidden. My body, my son, my feelings, my choices. Roman had once reinforced that belief by proving how badly love could hurt when someone decided they knew what was best for you. Now he stood beside me knowing everything, and I still had every choice I had before he arrived. Maybe more. I stepped into the water. Roman watched, but didn't follow. The change came easily now. Blue-green scales moved along my skin as my legs merged beneath the surface. I had done this in front of him before, but something about tonight felt different. There was no test in it, no fear waiting for his reaction. I was simply tired of hiding when I didn't need to. Roman's silver-gray eyes followed the shimmer of the scales, then returned to my face. "You're staring," I said. "You're beautiful." That was dangerously close to smooth. "I can take it back." "Don't." He smiled. I moved closer to shore until the water reached my waist. "Roman." His expression changed at my tone. "Yeah. Come here." Roman obeyed without hesitation, stepping into the shallows and stopping within reach. Still waiting. Still asking without words. There was something dangerously satisfying about the most controlled man I had ever known waiting for my direction. I reached up, caught the front of his shirt, and pulled him toward me. Surprise flashed across his face a second before I kissed him. It wasn't forgiveness in one perfect moment. It wasn't the restoration of something we had lost. The first version of us was gone. Good. It had needed to end. This was something else. Something chosen after both of us knew exactly what it cost. When I pulled back, Roman didn't chase the kiss. His hand stayed carefully at his sides until I caught one and placed it at my waist. "Here," I said softly. "You can touch me here." His breath caught, but his hand stayed exactly where I had put it. "Understood." "Good. Does this mean, don't ruin it?" His laugh was quiet. "Right." I touched my forehead to his. "It means I want to try again." His eyes closed. "On your terms." "On ours." He opened them. That answer mattered too. Behind him, the cafe windows caught our reflection. Roman's silver eyes, the same eyes our son had inherited, and the blue-green scales I had once hidden the instant he walked through my door. Nothing about us was hidden now. Milo knew his father. Roman knew what I was. I knew why he had left. And none of those truths had erased the years we lost. They simply stopped controlling what came next. Roman brushed his thumb near my wrist, but didn't take my hand. "Can I?" he asked. Once, he had believed loving me meant choosing for me. Once, I had believed being safe meant never letting anyone close enough to choose anything at all. I turned my palm upward. "Yes." His fingers closed gently around mine. In the water below us, our reflections broke apart with each wave and came together again. His eyes had once exposed a secret I was desperate to protect. My scales had once represented everything I was afraid a human would reject. Now both were visible in the same reflection, and neither felt like evidence against me. Roman had found me years too late to reclaim the life he abandoned. But he had stayed long enough, changed enough, and listened enough for me to offer him something better. Not the past. A choice. And this time, it was mine.